Alright, hello and welcome to Minuscules Group 3. This group is going to feature a lot of overturns, which we did feature in the Basic Strokes with Copperplate video. So if you're not familiar with that, then please go have a look at the Basic Strokes video first, so that you can really get to grips with these letters. Alright, so we're only going to look at 3 letters today, which is the N, the M and the P. I've already started this off, so we should be able to just go straight on in. Today I'm using Sumi ink with a Gillot 404 nib in an oblique holder. So an overturn we've gone through before, but it starts at the halfway line between your base line and your header line. Okay, so that is going to be an overturn plus we're going to have something called a compound turn right there. Okay, if I just clean that off really quickly, we'll go through. Pretty sure I've got a coloured pen somewhere. There we go. Yeah, okay, cool. That'll do. So, with an overturn, you want to start at the halfway line. I feel like I'm quite high up on this. There we go. Mind focus. God knows. There we go. So we're going to start at the halfway line, and so is your compound turn. We're going to start and finish roughly at the halfway line. In a compound turn, we've spoken before, but we should have the exact same amount of gap underneath your overturn as you do in your compound turn, going in both directions. So if it's looking squashed at any point, it's because one of your sections is not equivalent with others. So if I do an M again from nothing, I've got space here, yeah I do. Okay, so I'm going to start at the halfway line. I've got a hair on my nib, which is really frustrating. I'll do that again. There we go, much better. So it started at about the halfway point. I'm going to start at about the same point. I'm going to flick that up there. Okay, so when you cover this, I do have a little envelope here. When you cover this, if you can see right here, about right, can't even tell at this point. When you cover it, you should be seeing 2 loops the same on one side, and you should be seeing, oh, my ink bottle, there we go. And you should be seeing equivalent distanced downstrokes and an exit stroke from the bottom half. Okay, so an N is pretty straightforward. An M is a little more complicated. Let me just get a little bit more ink. There we go. So an M is a little bit more complicated, where it is composed of 3 components. So we have 2 overturns. So an overturn plus an overturn. And that's added on to a compound turn. Alrighty, and they should all be even. That's what's going to really make or break an M. I actually find M's really hard. They require so much consistency and focus. Just to get them to look right, and even when you're doing the point where you're starting the overturn, that has to be consistent 3 times in a row. I know a lot of calligraphers who don't like doing like multiples of the same letter in a row, because it's so much easier to point out where inconsistencies are. So like words with double L's or double T's or double E's or double O's, they have to be super consistent. So again, if I use just a quick envelope here to cover half my letter, we should see roughly consistent loops. Mine are a little bit inconsistent, but I'll get some more practice in a second. All right, then we are going to go into our 3rd letter, which is a P. they'll be a little bit more familiar. So if we have an entry stroke, which we haven't done in the previous two, plus, then we have almost a full pressure stroke, but it depends. If you're doing square tops, then you want this to be an even stroke as much as possible, all the way down, top to bottom. If you are not doing square tops, if you're doing the pointed tops, which is a European variation, then you want to go from thin to thick, back to thin, in a straight line. So mine's wobbled a little, but that's okay. So either of those, plus your underturn. Okay, so, oh, sorry, plus your compound turn. Misspoke there. So if I put one all together, have I got enough ink? Not really. There we go. So I'm going to do an entry stroke. I'll do the other one right here. There we go. And then we should have a compound turn just there. Okay, so if we analyse them a little bit, oh my gosh, give me this tissue. There we go. So I can clean my pen. With an older nib, or like a more finer nib, like a Gillot 404. So this is a vintage Gillot 404. A, they're really hard to come by, and B, they are quite fragile, so you want to clean them off as often as you can, basically, to avoid anything happening. Right, okay, so if we just have a look at a P really quickly, because an M is exactly the same as an N, where everything is supposed to start and stop at the halfway point. So you can see my underturn starts, oh my gosh, this could have just woken up, because an overturn starts at the halfway point, and it should then start again at the halfway point throughout the M. If you make a mistake, so if you do your first underturn absolutely fine and then go too high or too low, you can see it starts to look like your letter is falling one way or another. So you want to keep it consistent. Have I got some more? Oh, I still have space. Okay, we're good, we're good. So obviously this is just in monoline, but you want to keep it consistent across the letter so that you can see. I'm not so happy with that. I'll do it again. Just go, where we go? I can fit one more in. Okay. So halfway, halfway, halfway. Much better. Cool. So you can see if I put a ruler line across, you see that I'm ending and starting always at the halfway line. I'm not happy with that one either. Okay. Same deal at the end, but with an M, it is so much more noticeable. With a P, you obviously have your entry stroke we've been through many times before, but that should about finish at the halfway point, roughly. On a compound turn, your thickest part should be in the centre, and you should be getting thinner at either end. So if I show you just one but much larger, so if I do one double the size, so if I start from the halfway point, then we should go thickest in the middle and be going thinner at either end. This is obviously harder to see when it's smaller, but you should have your thickest part right here, so the most pressure that you're going to put on your pen in the middle. With a P, just to talk about heights really quickly, you're going to do roughly the same as what we did for a D or a T in the last group, where the start and stop of the ascender. Okay, it's a little wobbly. Gosh, I should have done some practice, but that's okay. So if I then continue it, something like that. Okay. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Right. So you can see, I don't know if you can quite see my lines through. I don't think you can. So that's my baseline. That's my header line. My next line up would be here, and my next line down is here. So you can see the height of a P doesn't quite stretch to my first ascender line. and it doesn't quite descend enough to my first descender line. Okay, so it's in the middle. If you do stretch it that way, it's going to look too long. There's going to be too much blank space at the top and bottom, especially at the bottom if you're not going to close this P off, if you're going to use a compound turn. There are other ways of doing a P, which I can show you. Oh, I can move this up a little. There we go. So another way of doing a P, I'll do it here. So again, it's with your entry stroke, and again, it's with either your full pressure stroke or it's with your pointed end stroke. You don't have to do a compound stroke here. I've put it in this group because the most common variation does have a compound stroke, but there are versions where you can do almost an incomplete oval here and put a terminus dot. That's absolutely fine. I've seen that quite a lot. If you have a double P in a letter, so like the words happy is such a hard word to do, but let's just have a look at a word really quickly here. So I can do that one, just that. Right, and then for my second P, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play, just to sort of offset that fear of having the two identical letters right next to each other be so much more obvious for any changes. I'm just gonna play with the heights. And that's absolutely fine. I've seen a lot of calligraphers do this if they have multiples of the same letter. So if that was my word happy, you can see I'm playing with the heights here. So my first P is a tiny bit shorter than my second P. Yeah, absolutely fine to do that. I wouldn't make a habit of keeping a P that long, but I would keep it in your back pocket as a strategy if you've got a particularly difficult word. Okay, all right. I'm going to do some practice now with those three letters. I had a comment on my last video saying please do them in a line, multiples altogether. I really need to move my toe. I'm going to move my ink over here because I am reaching across that constantly. There we go. All right. So if we start with an N, the difficulty with an N and an M is when you've got multiple, and I'll show you when I get to the end of one of them, but when you have multiple in a word, it can be, so we have to, it can be difficult to know your spacing between the two. So when I've done one, I've always said, okay, this needs to be the same as this, which is true. That is absolutely true. However, if you are then going into another letter which starts with an overturn, I'll show you what needs to happen. So I think I'm getting better with it there. Okay, but effectively what's happening is we need to make a decision. I'm getting worse at it seemingly. My gosh, look at that. Right, okay. There we go. We're back. I think it's much more obvious when you look at a calligrapher who does English roundhand, because is it English? No, yes, no, engrossus script. Excuse me, if they're using Gross's script, then they don't have a gradual increase and decrease of pressure. What they have is less of an analog clock and more of a digital clock, where either the pressure is on or off, and there's nothing in between. All right, so let's have a look at this. I've used Sumi, which actually takes ages to dry, so I should have used something different. It's just so inky and black and lovely. All right, so this rule absolutely applies, except for when you have a ligature that goes. So if I do one here, okay. I'll really move this up. There we go. Look at all my washi tape holding down my paper. So if we put on here, the enclosed spaces must be equal. Unless the next letter also starts with an undertone. No, gosh, with an overtone. I need to go to bed with an overtone. And what that means is, if we did it where, if I do two ends together, and I can show you, because it's the same with an N and a P, exactly the same. Yeah, okay. Okay. Is that about right? No, I'm having to like manually override my instincts here. You know, when you've been doing something for so long. God, there we go. Okay, that's much easier to see. Right. Okay. So with these two ends together, what happens is, if you have the same space over here as you do underneath, which I've done here, I've followed that rule, you're gonna get a gap between the two letters that is too wide. You're gonna get almost like two ovals of a gap. Yeah, I'm still in frame, aren't I? Cool. So what we need is, when we do an N, we should have an oval gap between the next N, effectively. So if it wasn't a compound turn, I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. Okay. If those are two N's next to each other, then the gap between the two should still equal an oval. Exactly the same as what's underneath each of these. But we've got to fit in here a compound turn and not an overturn. So I've got to be able to go to the bottom and back up and back down again in this space. So I've got to almost bisect that area. And that will make it look more normal. So that whole area should be an oval. So we've got to shunt them closer together. Okay, so on here, this looks far too far apart. So if I put it in a word, I'll show you what I mean again. So if I keep doing examples, then the point will get through if it's not through already, because I feel like I am. Ooh. What word can we do? I don't know. Let's have a look at oh, I've got a hair on my nib. Hold on. Let's have a look at the word funny. So a U we've already seen. We'll come to an F at some point. A bit wobbly, but that's okay. God, yeah, the word funny is horrendous. With two N's and a Y in it that all start with an overturn. Okay. All right. So this looks evenly spaced. If I do the word funny again, but without the spacing changes, we should be able to see. And can I fit it there? Yeah, maybe. It's got that bigger sender, isn't it? Okay. Okay. All right. So then you can see here that this looks far too far apart. It almost looks, is it? Yeah, it almost looks 1.5 times the spacing. So if I just show you on here, let me just clear my nib. There we go. Let me get a coloured pen into here. Right, so I've got an oval shape dictated by the width of my U. I've tried to put that oval shape into here, and I've tried to put it into here, and I've tried to put it here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. So I've actually got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 10 ovals here. And it should also be here, but we'll go through that later. So I've got 10 ovals from my U onwards. Right here in the top one, if I use a different colour, I've got a pink one somewhere, haven't I? There we go. All right, so in the top one, I've got an oval width right here. I've then tried to do an oval width right here. So mine's a little bit wide, but that's okay. So I've got 3, then I've nailed it. So I've then got an oval width right here in between my letters. 4, 5, and 6. So that's 6 ovals versus 10 ovals. So it is almost double the spacing. And it's going to make your word look too far apart, especially compared to words that don't have an overturn. So they don't have this strange ligature. Right. Okay. Still haven't done the words in a line, which I need to do. Alrighty, but hopefully that can explain. We want to go for the pink one, not the purple one. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of practice. I just want to make sure I'm at the right angle because I don't feel like I am for me. There we go. I can fit it onto here. I'll make this my last one because I think I'm almost out of frame, but here are my lines of M's. Oh, I think I've just got enough space to put a line of P's on there. I'll have to put it right underneath though. Alright, so a line of M's you can see in between my letters. Oh gosh, I hope it's had enough. I've got the width of an oval defined here. I've tried to fit that into here. Width of an oval, 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 oval. Yeah, so it should be consistent, but that ligature should bisect that oval space in between your letters just to make them look not too spread out. Yeah, I'm not at the right angle for me at all. Might have to adjust my camera a bit with. Just need to tilt it a little bit, I think. Okay. Maybe that's easier, yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to do square top actually. It's in a bit of a square top kind of mood. Yeah, that's fine. It's too high. So a P doesn't need that strange ligature because it starts with an entry stroke, so it starts from the bottom, not from the top. So I'm just trying to get into a rhythm here. Oh, my ink is dragging pretty bad. Sumi is not known for its ability to create fine hairlines. Because it is quite a, it's a thicker ink. I have diluted this down a little, but yeah, it can still be quite thick at times. That's why it takes so long to dry as well. And it can almost dry like a with like a stickiness to it. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So sometimes if you're trying to check if a piece of work is dry in Sumi ink, it can almost feel sticky. So if you've got it on particularly thick, I think. So if your work feels sticky, oh my gosh, look at that spacing, that was horrendous. That's because I'm trying to talk at the same time. There we go. So if your work is feeling sticky, you've got too much ink on, and you may need to dilute your Sumi ink. Okay. All right. There's my row of P's. So you can see I've changed my mind about the first one, so I'm not happy with that one. I changed my mind. I'm going to do full pressure strokes. That I don't even want to talk about. I'm so disappointed in that. But that's alright. That's what practice is for. The rest of it I feel like I'm getting pretty consistent. I'm on the slant line quite consistently. And my spacing is okay. I do feel like I flit about a little bit, but it's alright for practice. Alright. So that is group 3 of minuscules of letters that start with an overturn. Thanks so much.